Hey everybody, welcome to the Guys Learning Japanese podcast. How's it going, Nick?
It's going good, Derek. How are you?
Pretty good. So for this week's show, we're going to continue answering questions. So this is a basic Q&A episode like the last 2 weeks. So would you like to read the questions?
Sure. Okay. The first question is, do you think it's necessary to take Japanese classes? What do you think what do you think about getting a private tutor? And is it better to study alone or have a study group?
Do you want to go first or do you want me to?
No, you can go first.
So the first part is necessary to take Japanese classes?
Yeah.
No, I don't think it's necessary. I took classes for, I think, 2 or 3 years in university. It helped, but I don't consider it to be necessary at all, because I think I made most of my progress through studying by myself. But I'm a pretty self-motivated person, so if you can't really motivate yourself to study or keep up to your studies by yourself, maybe classes are a better environment for you. Also, classes are good because you have teacher support, and the teacher's putting demands on you, and if you have homework, it kind of forces you to stay on the ball. But if that's not necessary for you, if you can do it yourself, I think it's better that way. I prefer learning on my own, actually. And what was the second part?
What do you think of getting a private tutor?
I've never had a private tutor, but it sounds kind of expensive. I guess it could be useful. If you really know what you want and if you can communicate your needs to the tutor. So if you want your tutor to specifically work on your keigo, to enforce you to use keigo. For example, you're practicing speeches or you're practicing, talking in a very formal situation, and you could make sure that, or you could have them make sure that you're speaking appropriately. That could be really useful.
Yeah, that's a really good example.
Yeah, you set up scenarios or something, or maybe, I think we mentioned in a previous podcast, if your Japanese is too girly, if you're a guy and your Japanese is too girly, you could have the tutor correct your girly parts. You just have like a conversation together and you tell them, okay, whenever I say something girly, correct me.
When I first read the question, I thought, oh, there's no way I'm going to think that's a good idea. But in hearing your example of keigo, yeah, that's definitely made me rethink that. When I was living back in Australia, I was playing guitar, and I wanted to learn a very particular kind of blues guitar playing, which uses your fingers, like a finger picking style of guitar, and it's very hard to find good resources on that because it's an old style of music and it's a very particular style with finger picking. And then I actually found a tutor who was able to teach me that style specifically. And so that was really, really good in that way. So I think in the same way, if you have a very specific need, I agree with you. I think that a tutor might be a good idea, but like you said, it does sound really expensive.
Yeah, it could be useful, like if you could find like an online tutor. If I don't know, a person you could tell them to check your writing. You could, do some composition a few times a week or maybe once a week, and then you have them check it, correct it, and then go over it with you, and then you could pay them a certain amount. Maybe that's more of an editor than a tutor, but
Yeah, well, keep in mind though that you could probably get that service for free if you just put in a little bit of hard work on the service Lang 8. You could just be correcting their work, and they could probably be correcting yours, and you could have that exact same situation for free. So there probably are free options out there as well.
Right, right. Okay.
The third part of the question was, is it better to study alone or have a study group?
I like the idea of studying in a group, but I don't think I could do it, honestly. I'll probably end up chatting with the people that I'm with, so I think studying alone is better for me. When I study, I like to, put some music on in the background, usually with my earphones or earpods, and then, I just get into a zone and I kind of ignore everyone. But I think if there are friends around me, I'll probably end up chatting with them, asking them, hey, what are you studying? Oh, that's cool. And they'll probably ask me questions too. So I don't think it's a good environment to concentrate. Not for me, at least.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. On the one hand, I think it might be a good idea of you checking that your comprehension, because if you're both studying for the same thing, for example, you can check each other's, you can sort of do mini tests on each other and stuff like that, which is probably a good thing. But like you said, I think the problem with study groups is actually the same problem that I have with Japanese classes, which is that I find it hard to conform to someone else's schedule. I don't really like the idea of being interrupted when I'm concentrating, and I like the idea of being able to study for the exact length of time that I would like to study for. I also tend to think that a problem with Japanese classes is that, as opposed to working towards comprehending the language, what unfortunately often happens, or what happened to me at least when I was in university, is I fell into the trap of working towards a grade, and I just think that can be harmful to your Japanese. Rather than studying the language, you're just working towards a grade.
Mm-hmm. Okay, do you want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, sure.
All
Okay, so
right.
the next question is, which dialect of Japanese is the best to learn?
This is a good question. I like
Yeah,
it.
yeah, me too.
Does that mean I should answer it first?
I can answer it if you would like.
All right, go ahead.
Uh, well, there is a common Tokyo dialect. It has a word in Japanese that I can't quite remember at the time, at this moment. Do you remember what that's called?
Probably Hyojungo.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yep.
Yeah. Well,
Hyojungo.
I think there's a more politically correct term now. I think people are using like kyotsugo,
Okay.
meaning like, well, I guess the meaning is the same, but I guess the meaning of Hyojingo is more like standard language. So it kind of, you know, it devalues other dialects. So I
Right.
guess if you
Okay.
use kyotsugo, it's more like the common language. It's not devaluing the other local dialects as much. Yeah. But I think most people don't care about that. Most people will say hyojingo, but the more politically correct version is kyotsugo now. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and all the textbooks and a lot of TV shows and a lot of everything that you're going to be experiencing Japanese is going to be written or expressed in that form, in that standard Japanese form.
Yeah, the
And
Tokyo dialect.
yeah, and so probably whether you like it or not, that's the one that you're going to be hearing the most. And I would recommend as a learner, especially in the early stages, that's the one that you would that's the one that you should try and tackle. I don't think you should start with a specific dialect first.
I think regardless of where you live, everybody understands the Tokyo dialect. So that's really good. Basically, that's what a kyotsugo is. Like everybody understands it. It is the common language. But let's say, for example, you, for some reason, decide to learn a dialect from Aomori, but you live in Kyushu. People aren't going to be able to understand you. Uh, Ideally, I think you should start with the common language, and then after that, maybe you should learn the local language. So if you're living in Aomori, you should probably try and pick up on the local dialect. If you live in Osaka, you should probably pick up on the standard Osaka dialect. It's like when they say, when in Osaka, do as the Osakans, right?
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
That's
Yeah, I
pretty
agree with
corny.
that. Yeah, yeah, that's all right. I agree with that completely. Yeah, I think it will happen naturally. I know that basically the second that I arrived in Nagoya, people were telling me all about Nagoya's dialect, and so I ended up and they wanted me to say it, and then they'd giggle, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
They'd really revel in talking to me about their dialect and
Hmm.
talking about their dialect in comparison with other dialects and things like that, and so yeah, I think they sort of I think you're just going to naturally pick up the dialect if you are spending quite a lot of time in that prefecture.
Do you speak in any dialect, or are you a standard guy?
I do speak in a dialect. I don't speak in a strong dialect. Most of the time, I don't use a dialect. But there was a time where I found a particular Nagoya way of saying a certain kind of phrase. I found it much easier for my sort of tongue
Hmm.
to pronounce, and so I'd always use that way of saying it. I was fairly even aware actually that it was a part of the dialect, but yeah, I've subsequently sort of changed that. But yeah, I still sort of speak in a dialect in some ways, just because I don't know. I guess it's the way that I've gotten used to
Hmm.
Japanese.
Yeah, I honestly wasn't aware that I spoke in any dialect, but uh, whenever I travel a little bit, like I have some friends over in Kanagawa and Tokyo, and even in some of my friends in Osaka, they've said the same thing, but they'd say like, "Why are you speaking in a Nagoya dialect?" And then I feel kind of surprised, like Nagoya dialect. No, this is the common language, isn't it? And then they're like, "No, no, that's not. That's Nagoya dialect." So I'm not even sure what's common or normal anymore.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure that a lot of Japanese people do either.
Yeah.
Uh, I think I think it's probably a little bit like when I first met you, Derek. When sometimes I would say things to you that I just thought were regular expressions, they were just regular phrases, and then you would look at me with a confused look, and then I would later find out that it's actually Australian slang. And
Yeah,
uh,
stuffing up is a good example of that. I still haven't really adjusted to that.
yeah. So that would be yeah, stuffing up. Yeah, and so I think it might just be like that. I know certainly, I've talked to people, who are from the Mie area, which they normally speak in a kind of an Osaka or Kansei style of speaking, Kansei dialect, and anyway, and yeah, I don't think that they're very aware of their own dialect. I think they just speak the way they speak, and
Yeah.
they just think that's totally normal.
Yeah. All right.
All right, let's move on to another question. All right, okay. Whenever I talk to Japanese people, they respond to me in broken English. How do you react to this?
Um. Okay. This hasn't really happened to me too much. Has this happened to you a lot?
No, no.
Yeah. I'm trying to imagine what the cause could be. I think maybe the Japanese person, maybe they weren't listening, and then when they turned around, they noticed, oh, it's a foreigner. So maybe it's their instinct to react in English. Or honestly, I think I don't want to make everyone insecure here, but how is your pronunciation? Like, if your pronunciation is bad, maybe the Japanese person couldn't catch it. So they're thinking, oh, maybe you spoke in English. So they're going to respond in English.
Yeah, and the same in the same vein, I think your a person's body language is also really important. I think if they're giving off an impression that they look very worried and they don't look very comfortable speaking in Japanese, and it's very very obvious.
Yeah, if you're like
Maybe
waving your arms, doing all kinds of like unnatural gestures that Japanese people don't usually do.
yeah, yeah. I mean, admittedly, it has happened to me before when I was returning from Osaka when I went home to Australia. I was on the train and I was asking lots of people directions, and one of the people that I was sitting next to, he started speaking to me in English, and I didn't get the impression that he was doing it because he didn't understand me or he didn't think I could speak Japanese. I just think he was doing it because he wanted to try out his English. I mean, it was like a free little lesson that he could get, and I didn't really take that as an insult at all. I just thought, good on him. He's got the confidence to try it out on me, and my confidence wasn't harmed or hurt in any way. But I wouldn't say that's a common scenario. I know that certainly where I live, which is it's a pretty sort of it's basically a country. I don't think I've ever heard anybody speaking to me in English in this area.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I don't really deal with it much in Nagoya. There, I don't really go to the gaijin pubs or gaijin bars much, but I have a few friends that go sometimes, and they ask me to go with them, so I tag along. And like sometimes, like the waiters or the waitresses, they'll approach you in English with your orders, and to me, I always feel like, wow, like this is really interesting. Like, this doesn't happen often. Uh, so yeah, I'm not used to people approaching me in English in Japan. So I don't know. Maybe this person has a very special issue. Maybe he's hanging out in an area or that she. Does it say the gender, name, or anything? No.
No, no, no.
Oh, well, maybe it's you know they're always around like an English school or something, and the people in that area they're desperate to practice English.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't have any more advice to give either.
Hmm.
So do you want to move on to the next question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, here's another sort of serious question. Will Japanese people ever accept me? I'm fluent and I can't make any friends.
This is gonna be a long one.
Yeah.
Um, I think yes, Japanese people will accept you. Uh, Honestly, I don't think Japanese people even care or think about anything like that at all. That's just my opinion on the matter. Uh, I think maybe even beyond fluency, I think maybe your personality and your general demeanor, they're more important than your language ability. Uh, I don't know, if it's a guy and you're trying to make guy friends, I think it's going to be pretty hard. Like if I compare this situation to Canada, I think a lot of Canadian men, it's not rare for them to hang out together. Guys, they might go out a few times a week, do something together. I don't know, go fishing or go to a bar or just watch hockey together on TV. But in Japan, I think guys are really busy. Like they spend a lot of time at work, or they have social obligations. So I think if you're trying to hang out with guys, like it's going to be really hard because their time is already really limited. So you're just kind of shaving their they're already short hours of sleep. Like they're not getting many hours of sleep as it is. So for girls, it's different. I know girls hang out with people a lot. Like I know a lot of girls, they go out, they meet their friends, 3, 4 times a week. They go to yoga classes and they're doing all kinds of stuff, but they're working less. You know, that's so. I guess if you want friends who are women, I think it's possible. But if you want friends that are guys, it might be a little bit harder.
Yeah, I might be wrong on this, but I tend to think that within Japanese culture, it's a bit rarer for people, whether guys or girls. It's a bit rarer for someone just to come over to your house just to sort of hang out.
Yeah,
And I've if you take even a teacher at our work who's sort of a socialite. Uh, Whenever I ask her what she's planning on doing on the weekend or anything, she's normally going out with friends, but the way that she normally goes out with these friends isn't normally for them to come over to her house and hang out and have cake or whatever. They normally go out together to various places,
yeah,
or in her case, she's part of a softball team, and so she spends a lot of time at softball or after softball hanging out with these people. And so I think it's maybe a good idea to if you happen to have a hobby or say you're interested in a martial arts or you're interested in a sport or something like that, you can just go along to those events and try and make friends that way, and then you'll probably find that the more you do that, the more friends you'll be able to make that have similar interests to you, and sure enough, after practice or something, you'll end up talking to each other or talking to each other on the way home on the train or whatever it might be. So you'll get opportunities in that way to make friends.
yeah. If you're looking to make friends, guys or girls, I think running is probably a really good way. Like running is booming in Japan. Like Uh, I think 5 years ago, not too many people were running, but there's just so many people running now. I hate running personally. I'm not interested at all. I think it's a waste of time and energy, but that's another matter. But if you're looking to make friends, you could join like a running circle. A lot of people, they have like communities on Facebook and they get together, they run, and after they run together, they go out for ramen together. So
Yeah, yeah. I think
is that what the question is? Like by accept, it means like making friends. You think? Yeah.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I get it is possible to make friends, but yeah, just finding like people who have time or a common interest. Working within the cultural expectations. You know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There definitely are some differences though. I remember when I first came to this country thinking it was a bit odd that, for example, on the train, most people don't really talk to each other. There's a lot of silence. There's a lot of people staring at their phones
Mhm.
or trying to get some sleep. And
Mhm.
I remember thinking, well, this is a country full of people who, are closed off to one another, and that opinion was wrong. And I've subsequently learned that it's it's a bit although it's a bit harder to bump into people and just start up a conversation with any old stranger and sort of become friends with them that way. It's people are still they're very lively and they're getting together normally at events or
Yeah. Yeah.
when they're taking classes together. So I really think that's just the avenue that you have to take.
Right. I think that's a really good point. Yeah. Like people don't usually start a friendship just through bumping into each other. Okay,
Let's move on to the next question.
nice.
Okay, I've been studying Japanese for so many years now, and I still have a lot of trouble communicating in Japanese. Sometimes I get so discouraged, I feel like quitting the language altogether. How long have you guys been studying? Do you go through phases of losing your motivation? And any advice to keep going?
Okay. So I've been studying since I think 2003, 2002 or 2003. So maybe a little over 10 years. I'm not sure actually. And so something to deal with discouragement, how to move beyond losing your motivation. That's the question.
Yeah. Yep.
I just think you have to find meaning or a reason of why you're studying Japanese. To me, it's I enjoy, reading Japanese books, and I enjoy, playing Japanese video games. Like there's a long list of games in Japanese that I really want to play because maybe I didn't like the English translation, or maybe I don't even know the difference between the English and the Japanese. But the main reason is I'm interested in these Japanese products. So learning Japanese for the sake of learning Japanese is not my goal. I don't really care about that too much. But the more Japanese I learn, the better I can understand Japanese literature or Japanese games or Japanese novels, comic books, whatever. That's that's where I get my motivation. So that's the only advice I have. I just think it's really important for you to find a reason. Why are you deciding to study Japanese? Why did you start in the first place? Where do you want to go with this?
Yeah. So, I mean, what happens then if you get discouraged? So, say for example, you have a book that you really want to read, and you're reading it, and you think, I just can't understand this. I mean, and you get do you get discouraged from that, and how do you cope with that feeling?
I'll just put the book away and continue studying and hopefully find something easier to read. I just move on. I always go back to stuff. I have books that I still can't read, but I bought them 4 or 5 years ago. They're just too hard. I thought, this book looks interesting. I'm going to get it. I start trying to read it. It's too hard. I put it away. I think now maybe I'm ready for it now, but I haven't looked at it yet. So it's just a continual process. It's not something you can rush.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. So you sort of have an implicit faith in your ability to, that maybe after a year or after 6 months or after 2 years or whatever, you're just going to be able to return to this book, and since you've been studying the whole time in the meantime, you'll just be able to return and probably be able to read it.
Yeah, I wish upon the stars every night.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's good advice about yeah, I think it's I think you're tapping into something which is interesting, which is you have a mindset which is geared towards learning, and it's geared towards growth. And that you essentially assume, look, if I'm just studying every day and I'm, trying my best every day, I'm going to grow and I'm going to learn Japanese. And it might be slow. It might take, like you said, 10 years. It's probably going to take even more years till you're, at a level that you're really, really comfortable with. Yeah, but it's going to happen eventually, and it's just you just sort of have to. I think if you're sort of you're trained to think in that sort of way, I don't think you get discouraged as much. I think it's important to have that sort of mindset when you're learning
Yeah,
something because it's like you either take it as a constant failure, that you're always failing, or you take it as you're constantly learning. It's sort of just which way you decide to look at it.
hmm
Yeah. So, any advice to keep going?
basically what I said earlier, finding a reason to study. Like, why are you studying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that who was that Spanish conqueror who arrived on the shores of Mexico, I believe it was, and burnt all his ships so that basically there was no going back.
I don't know.
Well, I think it's quite a sort of popular story. That you need to sort of burn your ships or burn your bridges and everything like that. And I think that any advice to keep going is, I think going to Japan or coming to Japan is definitely a good way to keep going, because you're faced with Japanese every day, and you either have to learn the language. It's a kind of sink or swim thing. You either have to learn it, or you're gonna have a hard time in this country, or you're just gonna have to go home. I think it's a great motivating influence is to get in this country. And look, I want friends. I want Japanese friends. I just got to go out there and do it, sort of thing.
Yeah. That seems to be a common pattern. You have the people who become really proficient, the people who live in a bubble, and the people who go home. Not too many people in between.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, luckily, there's not all that many people who become proficient either. So if you do happen to conquer all of those challenges that are part of learning Japanese, you're really going to be in an extremely select group, which is something to be extremely proud of. You've actually conquered one of the hardest things that your life can throw at you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Celebrity status.
So it's something to be it's something to be sort of really proud of.
Okay, so you want to end the show there?
Yeah, that sounds like a good spot to end it.
Awesome. Okay, thanks for listening to the Guys Learning Japanese podcast. Send your questions to gljpodcasts@gmail.com. We'll answer your questions on the show.